Hello and welcome everyone to Resurge Your Business Like You Mean Business. It's part of a 7-part series. This is workshop number 6, and I am going to introduce to you Robin Koenig, who is our guest speaker. Robin, I'll give it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Number 6. Wow. I feel like we've gone through these pretty quickly and we're approaching the end of the series, but just in case somebody's watching and they're like, what about the other 5? Well, they are all on the Carlsbad Chamber of Commerce website. So you can go back and watch any of them, which might help if I make a reference to a different workshop, which I tend to do. So anyway, thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate it. Let me go ahead and share my screen so that I can get started with this presentation. So let's see. Here we go. Okay, so today we are talking about the restoring part of the business, which is, kind of, again, that journey of resurging. And I combined 2 of the topics today. I combined both delivery and sales. And, they're definitely 2 pieces of the business puzzle that go hand in hand. And so I thought that that would be a really relevant way to help businesses kind of put a different lens on those 2 pieces of their business. So go ahead and here we go. Okay. So, this is just kind of a statement. I like to kind of share a positioning statement when it comes to the topic that we're discussing. So today, a typical small business operates through a handful of core processes, right? That's a true statement. But what's interesting is that how these processes work together is that unique system that will allow a business to break through not just the sustainability, but also even some of the stability that we've been talking about in this workshop series, to go from stability, break through sustainability, and go into that next step into the world of scaling. And so if you're familiar with the E-Myth, which we've been talking a little bit about in some of these workshops, the E-Myth Revisited calls this your franchise prototype. And this is basically the belief or the approach that how you run your business is, in this franchise prototype, it's how you run your business as opposed to having your business run you. And so when I say franchise prototype, and again, you can reference the E-Myth for this, it's not about creating a franchise, but it's about building a model or system that is more turnkey in the vein of a franchise. So, I wanted to set the stage for that. And one of the biggest things that I've been working with a lot of clients on is this idea that we are in a place right now, which I'm sure a lot of business owners are really trying to think about, like, what can they do? What do they have control over right now to work on their business? And I like to frame this up as an approach that instead of resisting, that we're looking to help a business persist, right? So if you've watched any of my workshops, you probably realize I love talking about words, but if you put that into your frame of mind and think about how do you want to persist in this current situation, in the current, the climate that we're dealing with, versus resist the kinds of changes that are happening. So on that note, this is the wheel that we've been using for this entire series. And so this is meant to just kind of be a reference point as to where we are. So we are here, we're talking about the 6th and the 7th segments of the business maturity wheel. And so we've spent, the first 5 workshops going around the wheel, mostly on the strategic side, right? The energy or the culture, the strategic direction, the finances, and then the brand. And then last week we talked about people and teamwork. And that is extremely important before we even get started in what we're talking about today, was to really set the foundation of the organizational structure and what those roles and responsibilities look like before you even put them into play in a delivery system and a sales system. So that's where we're going. And you can see also on the right side of the slide here that we've, again, kind of gone through those different understandings of where the business is at. If it's a level 1, it's really in that startup phase. Level 2, really looking to get some stability. Level 3 is moving into or through sustainability towards that level 4, which is scalability. And then ultimately at that level 5, sellability or whatever it is that you want to do with your business, right? That full freedom. So I want to focus now on kind of an understanding as to well, what do these really mean, right? When I say delivery and sales and marketing, sometimes they're actually grouped together, and I believe in that. I actually agree with that because they work hand in hand, or we like to say, it's a collaboration of three things, but they are different things, and that's why we point them out and we work on them separately to ensure that we're not missing something in those steps to really make the most of the business opportunities in these three areas. And so I like to refer to this as the client journey. The client journey is that collaboration of three things. One of them is marketing, which we'll be talking about next week in our final workshop, which is honestly, it's really, that's the identification and conversion of your leads. It's finding those people that you want to, have a conversation with and converting them into what we call our high probability prospects. And so we're going to talk about that next week, but we always focus on marketing last because really we need to have sales and delivery set up and in line and working for us prior to actually getting leads in. So the sales piece, which we'll talk about in the second half of this workshop, is really about getting qualified and ready to buy prospects and converting the expectations of those prospects into agreements and those dollars into investments. And so we're going to talk more about that, but that's the definition of what sales is when we're working in this methodology. And then the third piece of the collaboration is delivery, and that's what we're going to talk about first. And delivery is what we refer to as upholding the agreement that's being made to the client, the customer, the patient, and holding each party accountable, not only just the client or the customer, but also the business accountable based on whatever the investment is of their time, their money, and their energy. And so this collaboration of all these three things, this client journey, traces the steps of your ideal client as they go through and they progress from essentially never having heard of you to wanting to tell everyone about you, right? We refer to that as being the champion of your business. And so what's really interesting is, within the sales pocket of this, we talk about, qualified and ready to buy prospects. Well, 99% of those ideal clients, and this is not statistically relevant, but it's kind of just a philosophy that 99% of those ideal clients want information. 1% of them are looking to buy, and those are your high probability prospects. So I just kind of wanted to plant that seed for you. This is not about getting everybody and anybody through this client journey. This is about making sure you're getting the right people through the journey and then being able to, convert them, get them into the agreement piece of it, and then deliver upon that agreement. So let's talk a little bit about delivery. Delivery, I like to kind of just, put this into two words. This is the way, right? If you think about delivery as far as your business is concerned, it's the way that you do things. It's the way that you deliver on that agreement. And so if we put this now into context, when we're looking at, well, where are you in your business maturity when it comes to delivery? So a level 1 place as far as delivery would be concerned would be that the way or the delivery system is understood, right? If you can say, well, it's understood, then you're probably like around a level 1, right? A startup moving into a stability when it comes to the delivery part of your business. And so the way for you, I just use the phrase, the way for you to move that into the next level, right? Improve on that system to improve the maturity of your delivery is to define your process for each function or product or service that you have within your business, right? Just define the process. And when you're doing that, you're going to clearly state each step or stage for those processes, right? So every part of your business, what it is that you do or what it is that you sell or serve needs to have a process. And so that first piece of defining that and making it understood is going to help you mature in this, because then the next piece of it to get to that next level is to document it. A lot of businesses struggle in this piece. They say, well, we understand how we do it, but it might not be documented. And what's interesting, and I think that quite honestly, everything we've all been experiencing in these last 9 months has set the stage for this being even more critical and more important than it has been in the past. So documenting standard operating procedures means that you're defining the procedures for each stage. So first you started to say, well, we understand that there's a process. Now we need to define those procedures. And what are the pieces of the puzzle that we need to consider? We like to call these, what are the dependencies, or who are the dependencies, or the prerequisites, meaning what needs to happen first, or what's the condition for something to occur in order for something to be considered done, right, or completed. And when that happens, there typically is a handoff process, right? So whether it be to another person or another part of the business, in order for the client to keep moving forward, or the customer to move forward in that experience, or again, solidify the agreement, the commitment that you're making to deliver on whatever it is that they're buying, then there needs to be a defined understanding of a standard operating procedure so that things are more efficient, right? And what I've learned in the last 9 months or so is that when things unexpectedly change, having standard operating procedures or revising your standard operating procedures is so extremely important, right? So if for whatever reason, and we've seen this happen, a business, all of a sudden their staffing changes, right? Maybe they've had to reduce their staffing, which has happened quite a bit, or even increase their staffing. Well, how do you quickly acclimate new people or new systems? Is you have standard operating procedures that are easy to then say, okay, well, this is how it's done, right? And now it's documented. So next time something happens or comes up and you need to ensure that it's not just understood, but it's actually followed, documenting those standard operating procedures is really key. And then the third level of this, so if we want to go from, again, startup to stability and long-term sustainability, is being able to communicate and actually ensure execution, right? So it's one thing to say, we get it, and then, oh yeah, and it's documented, but now we got to make sure the team, the people that are working within the business or as part of the business, even if it's an independent contractor or an outside resource, that they're following the processes and the procedures. And then in addition, making sure that the customer understands what's going to happen next. They understand the sequence of what to expect. And if there's something that you also need from them, it could be payment, it could be signing a form, whatever that is, again, getting all the way through the understanding, then to the documentation of it, to then the communication and the execution of it. Once that happens, then you're definitely going to see there's an improvement in efficiency, productivity. Actually, I have on here a couple of reasons why this is important. Why even bother defining your delivery process, right? If you're like, I know how to do it, it's in my head. Well, as the business owner, it can't stay there forever, right? Because at some point, you're going to want to be able to pass it on to somebody else, so you're not the one doing it all the time. Remember last week, if you attended or watched the workshop about people, it's important for a business owner to ensure that they're not the technician, or to the person doing the job every single day, I say making the pies or producing whatever it is. The business owner can't do that themselves forever. If your name is the only one in the box for every single function, that's probably not a long-term sustainability strategy for your business. So once you're able to define these processes and say, well, I'm not the only one that knows how to do this, then you really start to see the improvement, not only around organization, controlling the quality of the business, the other reason why this is helpful is ensuring that you're fulfilling on those promises to your customers, no matter who is doing it. Things happen, where you need somebody else to fill in your shoes, then you want to make sure that they know how to do that in the way that your business wants it to happen. It also empowers you to replace or replicate yourself once you get to that place where you want to scale, right? So there's a system now that somebody else can execute. And all of a sudden, your business is really starting to grow and expand, and it's more effortless. And then the last piece is that those improvements. So once you're able to say, now it's understood, okay, cool, now it's documented, and my people know how to do it, they've been trained, and my customers know what to expect. Now I can see, where do I want to continuously improve, right? Now we're just kind of stepping back from it and watching it happen and putting a lens on, well, what do I want to now improve on a regular basis so that my intention and my lens or focus on delivery is very purposeful and very intentional. That is, bringing your business to a much higher level of maturity for the long term in your delivery process, which is key. Once we do that, then you can start to connect the dots and focus on the sales side of the business. So like I mentioned in, earlier in the presentation, the sales side of the business is really about getting those qualified and ready to buy high probability prospects, the people that really want to buy, and converting them into an agreement, right? Getting the commitment or the enthusiastic yes that they want to, be a part of the business or the solution that you have to offer. And so I like to, just kind of set the stage from a sales perspective. Sales is something that a lot of business owners don't necessarily love. I kind of feel like sometimes it's almost like a love-hate relationship. You either really, really enjoy it and you get comfortable in it, or it's just not for you. And maybe you even have some, some beliefs, some, experiences that didn't feel so great, that have shaped your, what you think sales is or what you don't want it to be. And that can be something that, can hold you back from really focusing on sales as an important part of your business. I don't want to do sales. Well, sales is a big part. And what I like to, kind of, again, bold statement here is that selling is not a numbers game. It's a system of service. So if you wrap your brain around that a little bit, then maybe it gives you a different perspective to say, okay, well, how do I want to approach sales in my business, right? It doesn't have to be the way that you've seen it done before, but if you approach it as it's important and there's a value to it in how you do it, then you create it in a way that makes sense, that shows up as a system of service. So let's talk about the sales system and kind of what it involves. So it involves people, which is exactly why we talked about people last week, right? So a sales team, even if you are a sole proprietor like myself, is anyone who engages with your leads, prospects, or clients in any way, shape, or form. That could also be a system, right? It could be an outside resource, right? There's plenty of things out there right now that can help you automate, that can help you engage with people. And so if you consider that a part of your sales team, great. Like that is part of the puzzle, even if it's not an actual person. The sales process is your way, use that word again, right? It's the way of establishing a mutually beneficial and acceptable basis for doing business and establishing the terms of that agreement before moving it forward. And this I love. I actually really, really love talking about sales and doing sales when it comes to my business, because when I started to change my perception of what this was and approached it as the way of establishing a mutually beneficial way to do business together, that I was coming to an agreement with each and every potential, client that I was working with, then it felt different. And that is so key, right? We talked a lot about what it is that we think or believe, and then how it makes us feel, which then translates to an action or an inaction. And this is so true when it comes to sales. If you believe that it's, not for you, if you believe that it doesn't feel right, if you believe that it's about convincing somebody to do something or manipulating them, then it's not going to feel good. And you're probably going to resist it and not want to show up, right? I get that. So if we start to change how we think about it and believe that it is about finding an acceptable way to, come to an agreement of what you are able to offer as far as your business solution is going to help somebody for their problem, and they believe that too, then it's not convincing or manipulating somebody to buy. And I love that approach, and that is how I show up in my business, and I work with my clients to help coach them through that. So, when we look at going back to the wheel, how do we start to make some adjustments or improve our sales level of maturity? Well, it's very similar, in fact, to how we make improvements on delivery. So the very first piece of this is defining, right? Actually coming up with a sales pipeline and a process and the different stages or even benchmarks when it comes to sales. And so what I like to do is look at this as like, what are the repeatable steps that need to happen, or that you want to follow in order to establish a mutually agreeable or acceptable basis for doing business together. So if you have, a visual landscape, like for me, I'm very visual. I like to map this out as actual steps. Step one is this, step one is, a conversation. Step two is, defining the terms, whatever that is, but define the steps and the benchmarks and the things that need to happen as far as getting that client or prospect into an agreement on both sides that makes sense for both. And then along with that, it's not really mentioned here, but it's something to infuse into this is what are the principles or the ways that you want to show up when you're going through those repeatable steps. And so, you can refer to this as, kind of like referring to the values for your business or the principles as to how you do this. And this is key when you're using this as a way to, train your team, which kind of comes in that second or third, actually level 3. But ensuring that you have a good understanding as to how you want to do this, the principles. So for example, like compassion, right? Passion is one of the principles as to ways that I show up and approach my sales. That's just it's part of the way that I do it, right? I infuse that in my stages. I infuse that in my second level, which is the scripts and the sequence and the responses, right? So if we go from level 1, which is defining the pipeline or those steps, repeatable steps, then the second piece is to solidify what we call either the scope or the sequence or the scripts that go along with those steps, right? So if there's a step from here to here, well, what sequence, what people, what conversation or script? And script is just language that everybody's agreeing on in order to use consistently. It doesn't mean it has to sound like a script, like it doesn't sound real, but it's just kind of like, this is the way that we want it to sound or be communicated in order to ensure that the message is appropriate and consistent. So when you do that, you're able to infuse the way or the principles that are part of your sales system. So compassion, care, integrity, honesty, all of those, think about, well, what is important to ensure that the message comes across and the way that you want it to? Because that's going to be key when you get to that third level. So third level maturity, when you're looking to get more sustainability and scalability to your business, is to train your team, whether it be, I jokingly say, like, if your team is an automation, then you want to make sure that the steps are built in, that the script or the language or the copy resonates, right? And is connected with the foundation of principles that you want it to come across, right? So your sales team is set up to be consistent and confident in how this sounds and works, right? I mean, because a system, it's got to work. that so you're training the system and the sales team to be confident and consistent, and that takes practice, right? It could take actually testing some of it, right? If, again, going back to, sometimes I use automation and I want to make sure that things are working, so I'm going to have to test it out on a client or myself, or somebody that I can, that's going to help me understand if it's working. And if not, how do I go back and tweak it and make sure that it's, in line with all of these pieces? If you have a team of people, like people that you're actually trying to train and get, practice with this, well, have them role play, have them try this out on some different people and see, what is it that maybe they don't feel good about, or what is it that they feel really good about, and start to involve the people that you're trusting to be a part of this process, involve them in the development of this. So, one of the biggest things that I've experienced with many of my clients is that the business owner tends to feel like they need to be the one to do all of this, that they need to be the one to, develop the system, to document the standard operating procedures, to do the training. And that's not necessarily true. And what can be really helpful is if you've got a team and you're going to want to grow your team, right? You want to get people that want to actually fill your shoes down the road. Well, engage them in this development piece, right? They probably know a lot of the systems and the steps and the sequences in a way that maybe you even forgot, because perhaps they're the ones doing it regularly. Well, ask them to take a moment and say, hey, you know what? You're really, really good at this. Can you actually now document this? Like, put this into a layout, because I believe that you're the best person with the highest level of understanding and expertise in this. Take a moment and actually document it. You're going to involve them and grow them as leaders in your business to then be the next group of people to help train new people, right? Instill more confidence and more consistency, but get them involved. Have them start, the next time you ask them, the next time that you do this, can you actually just lay it out, right? Create an outline of the steps. What are the steps? And then, who are the people involved, right? It's applicable to both delivery as well as sales, right? You can get your team involved in documenting and making sure it's well understood. You don't have to be the one to do it as the business owner, right? So I wanted to toss that out there for somebody to, kind of realize that it's not about you doing all of these things, but your ability to say, I want to do this and I want to spend the time on this for my business, that is up to you as the business owner. So, I was talking a little bit when we first, we're talking about sales, is this idea that sales don't have to be what we thought that they were before. And I love paradigm shifts. I think that, again, it's just a new way of thinking, which is really what my work is all about. I love to share a new way of thinking. And so I want to give you 2 paradigm shifts about sales. And this is from eMyth. I didn't come up with these, but I fully believe in them and I've invested in this approach. And I do think that, in fact, it's actually not from eMyth. So my correction on that, I actually have a reference, a resource that I'll share at the end, but it's from a great book called High Probability Selling. I should have put that on the slide for you. But there's 2 paradigm shifts that they talk about when it comes to thinking about selling. And the first paradigm shift is to stop looking for leads and start looking for potential investors. And what I love about this takes so much of the work that we did in the first couple of workshops, which was around, understanding your mission, solidifying your vision, really defining what that solution is to the problem that you're solving for people, and weaving in your why, right? That purpose. When that all comes together, then people want to invest. You're no longer competing on price, right? You're not looking to convince or change people's minds, and you're not competing on price. You're looking for people that are like, I want that. I want a part of that. How do I get to be a part of that? How do I invest myself, my time, my energy in that? That's when you start changing the way that sales looks and sounds for you, is when you stop looking for it and you stop looking for the potential lead, and you start looking for the people that are going to enthusiastically be like, yes, I want all of those things that you've already set the stage for. How do I get involved? That's the paradigm shift, the first one. And then the second paradigm shift is that understanding that if you've already gotten them through, the marketing piece, which we haven't talked about yet, and then they've gone through, this understanding that there is a value for them, well, now they've agreed to enter into a conversation with you, which technically that's a sales conversation. But they've agreed to enter into that conversation. And if we believe, right, if we think in a way that they've already decided that they want that solution, these are your high probability prospects. If we believe that they've already decided that they want the solution you have, then the conversation isn't about convincing them. They've already decided that. Now it's just about establishing the terms of the agreement. Great. You know what? We're having this conversation now. I believe that this is something that would really help me, right? Solve my problem. We don't need to talk about that anymore. All we need to do is talk about, well, how do we do it? How do we formulate an agreement? How do we formulate, that mutual understanding that works best for both sides? And what are the terms of that? It completely changes the conversation. It can remove a lot of fear, right? A lot of anxiety around, well, I don't like talking about sales because it's kind of scary. And what if they say no? You change the way you think about that. This isn't about them saying yes or no, because they're already there in the conversation. They want a solution. Now just figure out the how. That's the way that you enter into that sales conversation with a completely different lens. So, I want to leave this for you just to kind of think about if you have the right mindset, right? So that's first. Then you have the structure and then the core principles or values that will help you set the stage for the salesperson to essentially lead a conversation and focus the intention on what's happening in that moment, which is being present in the conversation. That's really what it is. It frees up all the other stuff because you've set the stage for the beliefs, you've set the stage for the structure and the steps in the way, and it's grounded in the principles. They're just there for the conversation. And there's a lot of liberation or freedom with that confidence that they're either going to get the agreement, awesome, or they're going to get comfortable with walking away from it, which is equally as awesome, only because it allows them to feel good and not be invested in whatever that outcome is, right? That changes the dynamic of that conversation. More often than not, what I believe, and I've seen to be true, is that more often than not, the agreement is what happens. But if and when it doesn't, then they get comfortable in that, and it doesn't affect or change the dynamic of how they approach sales. Now you just go back into the queue and you do it all over again. So these are two of the resources that I want to share with you, mostly about sales, to be honest, but the eMyth Revisited is one that I referenced last workshop because it is something that's such an awesome resource for a small business owner. And it has different topics that would be relevant, whether you're talking about strategic planning or people, delivery or sales, all of those things. But the second one is specific to, prospecting and selling, and it is a wonderful resource. I highly recommend it. It has changed the way that I've approached sales, but also the clients that I work with. And it's an easy read, but it definitely has a high level of impact. So I wanted to share that with you. And, just kind of round it out again, if this is something that you feel like, gosh, I really want to talk about this more, awesome. I'm available for a variety of things, just reach out to me when it comes to, questions, or even if you don't agree with it. Awesome. I would love to hear your input and your feedback around sales or delivery and what it is that you might be struggling with, or maybe there's a whole new way that you want to share with me about how you approach that. So I would love to hear that. Go ahead and just shoot me a message to my email or find me on LinkedIn or message Kathy and you can get a hold of me. But, I appreciate you taking the time to listen and hear my thoughts around delivery and sales. And I hope that there was a little nugget that maybe was helpful for you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Robin, so much for being here today. And I look forward to session 7 next week. Thank you.
Awesome.